From search to sold, mastering the buyer sales cycle today on the Wandering But Not Lost podcast.
And now your host, Jen O'Brien and Matt Emerson.
Welcome to the WB&L Wandering But Not Lost podcast. Together we align, connect, and prosper. This is episode 308, and you can find all those show notes over at WBNLpodcast.com. Today, we're going to give you another glimpse into our real estate sales builder course. And this lesson is from Module 4. It's our buyer module of our sales builder program. And this one is all about the buyer sales cycle, as well as the before, during, and after system that we think is so important that you master in order to really make sure that you're really doing a great job servicing your buyers. So we're going to talk about it from the buyer's perspective, kind of what they think is involved in a transaction, which, is legit because they don't know what they don't know. And then we take it into the agent side and really go into what really the agent is doing throughout that entire transaction. With everything that's happening now with buyer commissions, well, just commissions in general, right? I think it's really important that you obviously are providing more value to your buyers, or at least being able to communicate what your value proposition is to your buyers. And this lesson really points out all of the things that you do during a transaction, where there might be 10 or 12 things that the buyer thinks is happening on their side. There's probably, 30 things or more on the agent side that you have to take care of and deal with during that transaction. And then we break down that BDA system, that's the before, during, and after system, where you really focus in on all the things you need to be doing before the transaction, during the transaction, and after the transaction. And that sounds pretty basic and simple, and it is really for the most part. But the thing is, if you miss any of the steps along the way, you're probably not going to be communicating, as well as you possibly could with your buyer. And in the long run, you're not going to probably have as smooth of transaction as you could have if you really focus on all the separate parts together, or individually and then together. So anyway, enough of me. Let's jump into the lesson and let's let Jan take it over.
Let's discuss the buyer's sales cycle in the before, during, and after concept. The buyer's sales cycle from the buyer's point of view. All right, so before finding an agent to work with, buyers generally start searching and researching homes online 6 to 12 months prior to them actually needing to purchase. And usually, of course, it's on sites like Zillow, Realtor.com, or Redfin. Maybe they connect with a lender, maybe it's an online lender from one of the sites that they were on to check to see if they're qualified. Some may either continue to save for a down payment and closing costs. This graphic shows the rest of the sales cycle from the buyer's point of view, right? So they're going to find an agent, get pre-approved, find a home, make an offer, get a home inspection, get the home appraised, close the sale, get the keys, and move in. Yeah, and all the stress that goes with all of that, right? That's the buyer's point of view. Now let's take a look at the sales cycle from our point of view, from the real estate agent's point of view. So first, we got to find and attract buyers and all the things that go with that. Then we've got to nurture and cultivate the lead because, of course, many people are looking 6 to 12 months prior. So we got to have a complete system in place for that. Then throughout that, we've got to be able to convert that lead to an active buyer with a great use of our CRM, being able to know when to make follow-up calls, having multimedia connections with them so that we can show value. Finally, at some point, we're going to actually have a consultation, go over what the buyer process is for our area, start asking those qualifying questions. When somebody's actually ready to start looking, we've got to get them pre-approved or explain to them what proof of funds is for cash. Then we have to go through the whole process of selecting properties and coordinating showings, then showing homes, both resales and new construction if it's available in your area. Then it's writing and submitting an offer, maybe writing and submitting offer numerous times if you're in a seller's market versus a buyer's market. Negotiating until you get that offer accepted, and if not, it's back to showing homes and starting the process all over again. Then you got to go through the process when you do, congratulations, have an accepted offer. Making sure earnest money or deposits are put into the escrow or with the closing attorney. The whole under contract process has to happen, the due diligence, or inspections and negotiating repairs and all other little hurdles that sort of come up. throughout that once you're under contract phase. That's where a lot of the work really comes into play. Showing homes is fun. Getting all the things handled so that you can close, let them move in, and get paid is a whole nother story. So there's removing any other contingencies, ensuring there's a clear title that's going to go to the buyer. If it's a loan, getting the final loan approval. There's always underwriter and conditions and other conditions, and last minute things sometimes seem to pop up in the sale process when their buyer is getting a loan. Then it's scheduling and conducting the final walkthrough, negotiating and resolve any issues that might come up from the walkthrough. Then finally, loan docs are drawn and they go to the closing agent. You got to review the closing statement to make sure, nothing crazy got on there or no mistakes were made, because they can happen. Maybe you're going to schedule and attend that closing appointment. You got to get clear to close and the loans get funded. Now we're coordinating keys to the buyer. Oh, let's back up. We needed to coordinate to make sure that they turned on their utilities and they have all the tips on getting moved in, right? Then you get those keys to the buyer. That's awesome. Hopefully you can get a great picture or maybe even a video testimonial right there. Now you got to ensure your transaction file is complete, which you should have been doing during the entire transaction process. Your commission is processed, and then you have your post-closing plan. All right, I know that's a lot. We're going to go through a lot of that throughout this module, but just wanted to give you the perspective between what the buyer sees and what you really have to do to make this work well, just on the buyer side of a transaction. All right, before, during, and after checklist. So the only way, in my opinion, and with all my years of experience, that you are going to keep track of all this is to have a checklist or have a system that you follow. Do not rely on knowing that you know what to do next. Even if you're a seasoned agent and you're listening to this, get this out of your head and get it into a checklist, okay? Now we have a general checklist of tasks that you can take and use and customize for your area. That's a great starting point. So just use A to Z, working with a buyer checklist, and customize it for your area. And then you can jump into better systems that you're going to put in place from this checklist for before, during, and after. So in the before section, this is everything from that initial point of contact to writing the offer, to writing an offer, okay? It also includes what you do for a buyer consultation, getting qualified, the loan app, started with the lender. You want to be able to leverage all your websites and apps with the buyer for your search. So it just covers all these things that are going to happen before, okay? The buyer guide, maybe you're going to have some type of great buyer guide or manual or a series of emails that are going to help them throughout the process, right? Before they actually go out and you start looking at homes. So it's before is all the way up to the time that you write the offer, okay? So there's lots of little things you can do to make sure that you are providing VIP service and the client is seeing that you're communicating with them and keeping them informed. Then during is what's going to happen, all the tasks from once you have that executed contract to the actual closing of the sale. This is super important that you have a very detailed checklist that's going to cover all the little things I just went over, and there's a lot more little details within those tasks that I went through that need to be part of this checklist. And the best way to do it is to use a checklist, take the one we were giving you, modify it, and as you go through transactions, go back to your checklist and always refine it. The other part of during is understanding the required paperwork for each type of transaction. So what you need to turn into your brokerage from a resale versus a new home versus a short sale or a foreclosure HUD or VA owned are going to be slightly different. So get with your brokerage about what is the required documentation for your company and for your state or province. And then finally, after, it's what are your post-closing connections? What's the ongoing campaign and follow-up that you're going to do to continue to get referrals and repeat business from this client? Also, as part of that would be the requesting a client review, and then the follow-up campaign that you will need for that, to be able to get them to take the time and stop and give you that review. All right, that's it for this lesson. Join me and we'll keep moving on working with buyers.
Well, that's a great lesson. And, it's kind of timeless in how you actually deal with the buyer, no matter what's going on in the industry. Like I said, we just saw a big shakeup of, how we are getting paid in real estate now. And that's still obviously an unfolding story. But the nuts and bolts of how you actually work with a buyer or a seller, but in this case, a buyer, pretty much is the same thing, right? It's just a matter of really making sure that you understand the mindset of what their time frame is, stay connected to them, make sure that you're the one that they're going to turn to when it's time to actually buy, because might be one day they're not ready, and obviously the next day they are. So you want to make sure that you're right there to jump in and then finish that transaction off with them. So always think about their mindset, think about how you communicate with them, stay in contact with them throughout the transaction, through the ups and downs. We talk about this a lot at WBNL. You know, it might be easy to not want to or kind of avoid those conversations that are a little bit difficult, because they probably will come up during the transaction. They usually do, and now probably even more so than not now. But face them at the beginning of your day, check it off your list, get that over with, and your buyers will really be thankful for it in the long run. So all of that, and then really focus in on examining and mastering that BDA system, because it will help you on the front end, staying connected. It will help you through the transaction as you are going along through the road of closing that baby up, and then it'll help you afterwards to stay in connection with those those buyers, and so they become a client for life. So that's it. All the show notes over at WBNLpodcast.com. This was episode 308. And we will see you next week.